how have you been helping yourself to expand your ability to think over the years?
I think there are a few things. The first one is exercise.
Mm.
I am an inherently lazy person. As I said, I'm not a gym person or sports person. But even in London, I started walking. All right. And here in Hanoi, I try to walk every day, a number of kilometers and stuff like that, because that is my self-reflection time. That is where I turn off from the rest of the world. I can listen to a podcast, I can listen to an audio book, whatever, but it's my time where my brain isn't busy thinking about A, B, C, D, or what's happening or what happened. So I think that's the key aspect for me, is exercise. The other thing I would say regarding thinking is that, and I'm not perfect, well, I'm actually quite bad at this. I actually overthink a lot, and people tell me to stop overthinking. So, for example, the answer may be A, but then I'll go to, the answer may be 5, but my brain will go to 5 decimal points and then 5 or 6 numbers. Okay, that's just how my brain works. So sometimes I kind of overthink stuff. I kind of go into too much detail. And the other thing I would say is my brain thinking works at a different speed to my mouth, which sometimes is difficult because I'm talking about something, but my brain has already moved on to another thought, another thinking about something else. So again, sometimes I have to have a double take. I have to think, actually, I'm thinking about this, but I'm talking about this. How do they come together?
So talking about your thinking about the thinking.
Yeah, I know you're thinking. So it's all related. You see, it's all related.
Yeah.
Overthinking because I think about my thinking and you.
So
that's what makes. I think one thing I think is quite important is I shouldn't be a role model for anybody. I can be an influence. I can be an object of interest, whatever. But we're all different. Mm-hmm. Okay? And unless you're literally an identical twin, you're different from the next person.
Yeah.
So depending on the level of resolution we're looking at, we're all human beings. You're a man, I'm a man. Same. But then you get into, we both wear glasses. Same. But as you go down to the level of detail, there's divergence and we're all different. And I think one of the key things is that sometimes there is a push for similarity, to belong to a group, which is fine. But belong to it, don't be owned by it. And I suppose it's that thing about a group or a cult.
Yeah.
And so it's that sort of situation, and that's my take on it. I hope there's nobody else like me in the world, because having one Chris Jeffrey in the world is enough. Trust me, the world does not need more than one of me in the world. Wow. That would just be a headache.
Like, everyone wants to get to agreement very quickly. And that's one piece where people rush to agreement and they're really not in agreement because there's this avoidance of differences. And I think we have to look back to, like, even just in our personal lives, we'll say to someone, well, that your friend is very different than you. That's fun. It's interesting. Okay, so why isn't that fun and interesting in a meeting to hear a different opinion, to hear a different idea, to hear a different perspective, to hear how, say, I suggest an idea and to ask you, hey, please describe my idea, and find out, oh, wow, I didn't even think about it like that. But to be excited to hear the different angle versus feeling like we need to get to an agreement and quick and fast. And I think some of that in workplaces is that so many are based on blame, that it's all about like, hey, who did that wrong? Whose idea was that? And that failure isn't welcomed. Mistakes are like seen as a problem and something you want to get rid of and punish someone for almost, versus, well, how else? We all talk about it like, hey, we didn't get to successful points without those failures. That's when we learned. Those were the growth opportunities. So that's what I get back to with the reframing and the mindset, that like failure, to me, that's not a bad word. Someone else hears it as a very negative word. It goes back to the word like disruption. Someone who disrupts an industry, apparently that's a very good thing. Particularly in English. I don't know if it necessarily translates to all languages. Well, when I was younger, if you were told you were disruptive, that wasn't necessarily a good thing. You didn't want that on your report card that went home to your parents. So it is how you frame it, and that's the other, like, of the other important component, how we frame things and how we reframe them so we can hear them better.
So how can we help the people to get, better understanding one another and their differences, Leslie?
The one skill I think we all have to work on, myself included, active listening. I think that that's one of the most difficult things to do, and most people think they're doing it well. And it's everything from, we all know, they know the rule. Yep, turn off your electronic, or put away your electronic devices. And I always say, did you turn them away so you can't see them? Because every time a phone lights up with a notification, that glance over to it, that's a distraction. And during those few seconds, if you were talking, I missed half your sentence. So I might be on a totally different assumption of what you're talking about because I missed some of what you said. So, and then when I listen to you, I have to put everything else out of my mind. And that includes the first thing most of us are trying to do is we're planning what our response is going to be when you're done talking. Well, if I'm planning my response, that also means I'm not listening to everything you're saying now. And a lot of times we're thinking about maybe a conversation we had with someone else earlier in the day. We may be thinking about like, oh, what am I going to have for dinner? And all those split seconds or multiple seconds that we're not listening, we missed a lot. So we have to just be present and not have that pressure of like, hey, what am I going to do when she stops talking? Well, you can pause and think about what you want to ask next, but don't plan what you're going to ask next while I'm talking or while you're talking.
The biggest obstacle for anyone is the preponderance of the golden rule. Everyone has always been talking about the golden rule, and it's been instilled in us from religion, from upbringing, from school, from just, and that's a good intention, and it's outdated and it's wrong, because the one thing that the golden rule assumes is that everyone is the same. And everyone is not the same. Everyone does not have the same ideology, philosophy, background, heritage, values, religion, politics. They're all different. They're all over the place. So if people go through life thinking, well, I'm going to treat people the way that I want to be treated, they're missing out, because that's what the golden rule says, right? But the reality is we need to treat people the way that they want to be treated, because they're different. They're most probably different than we are. They have different needs, different motivations, different drivers, different experiences, different whatever it is. And we don't know that. We don't know that unless we have a relationship. We have that relationship building, and we understand them and what their needs are and what their preferences are in communication, in recognition, in every aspect. They're not going to be the same as we are. That is blatantly obvious in succession planning. I've been in so many succession planning sessions where leaders have identified their successors and said, this person will be great, and this person would be great, and this is my successor. And then you ask them the question, did you ask them? Do they want to be your successor? Is this part of their plan? And the answer is no, right? So these people, when it comes time and the person leaves and it's time for the succession to take place, the most obvious candidate is not the one that's selected. It's someone that's 2 or 3 down, because the obvious one did not want that job. They weren't interested. They were interested in something else. So it's not golden rule, it's platinum rule. Like, what do they want? What are their interests? What are their motivations? What are their drivers? What are their preferences? What are their likes? So I think that's the key for leaders. Leaders are promoted because most of the time for their expertise in a certain industry, and a lot of times some are promoted because of their emotional intelligence, but they may not have the technical skills. But at a certain level, you may not need that as much. So just having both, though, having the technical expertise to be able to know what's going on in the business, and then having the emotional intelligence, the self-awareness, as well as the empathy for others' experiences. Now that's the platinum rule, knowing how people want to be treated. And then taking it a step further, I'm calling that the rhodium rule, where you do something with it. You integrate that into your own being, because maybe there's something in that perspective that you're not paying attention to that would help you be even better yourself.
Beautiful, beautiful.